Thank you very much to the Norwegian press for being so gracious about my appearance here and so welcoming, and I think you'll all agree my Norwegian is truly splendid. Volga bolle, I may be. I wear that badge with pride, it would seem. My name is Katie Hopkins, and apart from the other labels that I've been called, I am an economist by background. I went through the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, and graduated from there as one of 8 girls. We started as a platoon of 30. I was sponsored through university by the Royal Intelligence Corps. My father says that they must have got muddled up somewhere and I got someone else's offer. And I was offered a 35-year regular commission with the Intelligence Corps. But as the Norwegian press say, I am just a failed reality TV star. Yeah. I did enter the Royal Military Academy, though, with a secret. At the time, I was suspected, or it was being diagnosed, that I was an epileptic. I was kind of determined that I was going to be in the army, no matter what. And despite probably advice to the contrary in my heart and in my head, I thought if I could complete the course and demonstrate that I was robust enough, I would prove that I was better than my condition. As it turns out, of course, somewhat older and wiser now, I see that an epileptic with a semi-automatic weapon might not be my finest of ideas. So I now fight for my country in other ways, is how I like to think of it, with my writing, my reporting, and my documentaries. And thank you very much to everybody for kindly taking the time out of your evening to watch my latest documentary, Homelands. And I think it really speaks to the bravery of the people that contributed to that documentary, the women prepared to speak out, the couples prepared to speak out, and the truths of those people. I think that's the joy of the documentary, is the searing truths of ordinary people. And that's really where my whole heart lies, is the truths of the people on the pavement that have no voice. So I live now and work on the road pretty much, documenting the truths of people that otherwise go unheard or unsaid, whether that's the true story of the migrant camps in Calais, where my photographer was lynched, beaten with a bar, had his equipment stolen, and had to be sent home and was off work for 6 months. I was fine. Living with white farmers in South Africa who are being systematically genocided from their land. I'm now banned from South Africa. Or the jihadi capital of Europe, which is Molenbeek. I spent some time there in Molenbeek. I wanted to show the world what it's like, living with jihadis. I was fortunate enough, or maybe unfortunate, to run into the mayor, Françoise Schepman, a woman whose political position depends on the support of the Muslim community. It's 80% Muslim in Molenbeek. She was warned about the Bataclan attackers before they launched their attack. She was given the names of the individuals. She was told their addresses. She was told that an attack was imminent, and she did nothing. And I asked her, why did you do nothing? How could you do nothing if you knew? And she told me it was not her job. It was not my job. She turned a blind eye to the planned terror attack in Paris because she was more interested in the Muslim vote. And this is a pattern repeated over and over and over. 137 died, 500 were injured, some beyond living a normal life ever again, because she needed to look after her vote. And it's indicative of what happens in societies when a Muslim voting populations take hold. And there are 3 simple phases to the Islamic takeover of our countries. I'll leave it to yourselves to work out where you're at. Firstly, the move out. Overwhelmed by new arrivals, the rapidly changing face of the place you used to know, traditional families are forced out, replaced often by 4 or 5 families where there used to be 2, 25 voters where there used to be a couple. Secondly, funding flows in. Mosques spring up. They multiply to serve and condition this densely packed population. Funding flows in through the mosques. Be under no illusion. It leverages the voice, the clout, and it lines the pockets of the Muslims who live there. Muslim housing is allocated by Muslim-run councils. A Muslim police force appears. I don't know if you've enjoyed that joy just yet. Thirdly, political monopoly. Political representation is pushed forward, promoted by the mosque, financed by the funds from overseas, and very often international money. And now you no longer have people voting for policy or things that they need to happen. You have people voting according to religion. Just take one look at Ilhan Omar in Minnesota as an example. She took the baton from another Muslim, Keith Ellison. Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, who waved her Palestinian flag as she celebrated her election to an American Congress. It always makes me wonder, you know. You're right there. One too many. How these people come to America for a better life, and yet the very flag they wave when they have been afforded an opportunity is the country they chose to leave behind. It's a curious thing. And whilst the nationals of any country are still being force-fed mandatory tolerance and multiculturalism, which is a blatant lie in my view, political Islam takes control of your city, its finances, its policing, its housing, its future decision-making. Muslim politicians are guaranteed tenure and Islamist succession in return for pandering to the Muslim vote, even if it means turning a blind eye to terror, as in the case of Françoise Schepman, who later tried to sue me on behalf of the city of Molenbeek for defaming her city, a city called the jihadi capital of Europe. It's quite hard to defame somewhere called the jihadi capital of Europe, but she alleged that was what I'd done. Inside that place are illegal mosques and money laundering facilities, clearly on view, talked about by the local population, but nobody does anything because they don't dare. Or take the example of my capital city. I say that with some shame, Londonistan, where our tiny Muslim mayor presides over a Muslim housing association, a Muslim police association, and throws an Eid party funded by taxpayers' money in Trafalgar Square to please the voting base that he needs. I'll assert here that it has become impossible for a non-Muslim to be elected to the office of mayor in London. I believe it's an electoral impossibility now. The London boroughs have staggeringly high Muslim populations by design. In Tower Hamlets, by far the biggest group is Muslims. Newham has one of the lowest white British populations, but the second highest concentration of Muslims, just behind, you guessed it, Tower Hamlets. And in the UK today, I am a minority white. In London, Luton, Leicester, Bradford, and Birmingham by 2020, as we saw in the documentary, Muslim births will outnumber births to any other by 2035. And you know, sometimes we say that, don't we, 2035? Oh, that sounds like a long way away. Just, you know, over 15 years' time, we are officially outnumbered. Our people are being forced out from within. And that's really what the genesis of Homelands was all about, was listening to people who say, I just don't know what's happening in this country. I don't recognize this country anymore. People tired of feeling like second-class citizens in a place where they pay taxes and they used to feel like they belong. You know, currently I think many mums, just like myself, I have 3 children aged 15, 14 and 10. That's why I spend so much time on the road. We feel like our children are targets. We worry for them when they're not with us. We worry for them when they're on the subway. Today, actually, and I think symbolically, or at least it feels it to me, is the 6th anniversary of Lee Rigby. He was the service personnel, a little sweet gentleman who was hacked to death with a machete on the streets of the UK after he was run over. It's also the 2nd anniversary of the Manchester Arena terror attack, where 22 of our young children, girls and boys, some mums, were blasted apart by bullets, by nuts and by bolts in a homemade explosive device. And the thing that really makes me angry is that you look at Twitter today and the hashtags that were permitted by the Twitter gods were "We stand united, together, we're stronger together, hashtag Manchester." Hashtags slaughtered by Islamists, actually, Twitter, if you want to tell it straight. This whole hashtags, lighting a tea candle, having a vigil, I respect people's needs, but it is not changing anything. It is not solving anything. I was in Poland recently, and was stood outside a bar on a pavement at about 9 o'clock at night, and it was still light and sunny. And 3 young girls, teenagers, I guess, cycled by on bikes, giggling, in their shirts and their tiny tops. And I tell you, my first instinct, I better not reenact because I will plunge from this platform. My first instinct in my gut was to run after them, say, "What do you think you're doing? Guys, get home now. Let's be careful now. Let's think about what we're doing. Did your mum know where you are?" That's my gut as a mother in the UK. And then I remembered I was in Poland, a Christian country, defiantly proud of its culture, a country that rejected Merkel's migrant quota, that upgraded its border fence and moved in the military when a vast army of young men of fighting age arrived in 2015. Poland says no to illegal immigration of any kind. It has the lowest foreign-born population of the EU at just 1.7% compared to 15% in my country. It had 0 terror attacks from 2012 to 2015. And it has a tiny minority of foreign nationals permitted to enter or live in the country, making up just 0.2%. My point is, these stats matter. Poland is the safest place in Europe to be a female. And Poland is the place to which me and my family now look as we look for a new place to call home. I met a family in Wales looking to move out to Hungary with their young son. They're full of the language, which if you're Welsh and you already speak Welsh, I think they've got no problems at all, I'm just saying. But they were also unsure about this kind of radical departure from Welsh life. But they knew they felt unwelcome and unwanted in their country, and so they needed to find someplace new. And that's where we find ourselves right now in the UK. And I can see it a little bit here. The need to retreat to defendable space. And I've had a glimpse into that. I've had a glimpse into our future, a bit like I see homelands as being our immediate future, or the thing we're living now. Our brothers and sisters in South Africa. And obviously, the Netherlands for them feels like very close to home, and I say that because, of course, we are neighbours in this. White farmers who have worked the bushveld for generations are well ahead of us in this need to retreat to defendable space. They are being systematically genocided from the land, cleansed by black gangs wielding axes and knives. I live with the farmers and I slept on their farms, and I can tell you, going to bed at night on a South African farm as a white farmer is something new. I always used to say, my son used to have nightmares, and I'd say, he'd say, there's monsters behind the cupboard. There's monsters behind the curtain. I used to go in, there's no monsters. But in South Africa, in the nighttime is when the monsters really do come. I follow the stories there every day. 6 attacks over the weekend. one gentleman so badly injured he was killed in the end, but what they did to him, not for here, they had to send in the trauma squad for the 15 black farm workers who lived on the farm that found the body, because what they did was so savage. Just this morning, another lady, Annette, has been killed. She was found face down with an iron bar around her throat and a hammer next to her body. They are systematically removing white people from South Africa, and because they're white, the world doesn't care. If they were a rhino, I believe someone would. I spoke to many of those victims and survivors, a wife who watched her husband shot dead in front of her and her daughters and gave birth to their first son 5 days later. A woman whose face was shot away by the gangs and somehow survived. A lovely man, Bernard, whose father was bludgeoned to death, whose son at 11 was shot at, and whose young boys can now no longer sleep and are on antidepressants. And one of them tried to commit suicide because he said he wanted to be with his grandfather. And I say all this because they are making a final stand. At the weekends, white farmers gather together in their hundreds to rehearse for the final battle. They practice their drills, they practice how to retreat, they practice how to get help. The women are practicing drills with their arms because they're preparing for a final battle of biblical proportions. And when you ask them, why don't you leave? Many are too poor, but really it's because they are too proud. They watched their grandfathers turn that bushveld into fertile farms, and they will not leave. They say, we will die in our boots for the love of the land. It is biblical and epic. There are 8% whites left. They will be gone within our lifetime. They are a glimpse, I believe, into our future. And even if this does feel distant to you, maybe, or improbable, or maybe the utterance of a, what was it? Vulgar bolle. You know, even if we're not looking to leave or retreat to a defendable space just yet, or we don't feel truly that we're a target, we can certainly feel the space we have closing in, closing down, the things you're allowed to say, the things you wouldn't think about saying, the fact that all of you, I suspect, in this room think before you speak. And my father always used to tell me, I didn't listen to him, think before you speak. I didn't do that. My mother always said as well, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. I ignored her too. But my point is, we can all feel this space closing in. And in the UK, we've just had a week where the Muslim mafia, as I call them, they really like it when I do that, tried to make Islamophobia an official government definition. It was accepted by Labour, it was accepted by the Muslim mayor, it was accepted by all the Labour and Muslim lobby groups, you imagine. And their definition that they want written into law, Islamophobia is rooted in racism. I don't know why I gestured at myself there. That's not a good thing to do. Islamophobia is rooted in racism, is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness and perceived Muslimness. I'd love to translate that for you into Norwegian, but frankly, it's a made-up word even in English. Made-up words, Muslimness. To define a phobia that is in itself a work of fiction. You know, my own Islamophobia came about when 2 jihadis in the UK tried to behead me. It's a true story. I say it with a smile because I'm not sure how else to deliver it. A woman wanted, as her wedding present from her jihadi fiancé, she wanted my head. She said I was the biggest bitch of them all. She better believe it. And so they practiced their plan. She went out and she bought a plastic shop dummy, like a plastic model of a human, and a machete thing, and they practiced chopping my head off. Nobody ever told me about their plan, which I think might have been common courtesy, I don't know. But instead, one night, a team of men dressed in black from the security forces came to my home in the West Country They rigged my telephone up to the local police station so that all I would have to do is pick it up and a police officer would come. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to find that intensely reassuring. And they fitted a panic box. It's a black square box. They put it at the top of my house, 3rd floor up. And should a jihadi come to behead me, the plan was that I would run up to the 3rd floor of my house and shake the panic box, and the police would come. My 3 children live on the 2nd floor of my house. They left my home in the night, and they told me not to worry. All in my home in the countryside in Devon, where I keep my children. You know, I share this story with you, not because I'm afraid. I'm not. And not because I fear for my own demise. That I certainly don't. I had brain surgery to cure my epilepsy, and so I made kind of peace with death a very long time ago. But I share this story because of a plot to kill me for my views in the UK in 2019. This is the reality of speaking out against Islam in Western Europe, in cities that have fallen to the Islamists. London, certainly. Paris, absolutely. Minneapolis, 100%. And that's before official blasphemy laws are in place, because once Islamophobia is accepted as a definition, then that book that I'll be writing from prison is going to happen. I'm relying on you to buy a copy. And I'm not alone, of course. Last month, a 74-year-old lady was woken by a call from the police wanting to speak to her about her blog, a 74-year-old lady's blog, because she put, "Gender is nonsense, pass it on." Gender is nonsense, pass it on. That was worth a police call to a 74-year-old. A Catholic lady who I'm in contact with now to support her was arrested in front of her 5 children, held in a cell for 7 hours, and questioned under caution after she inadvertently called a transgender man a woman. A man in Christchurch, you may have seen this footage, was visited in the early hours of a Sunday morning, the Christian day of worship, by armed police because he had dared question the narrative on the Christchurch shooting as put out by Jacinda Ardern. I have a few things to say to her if I ever meet her in the street. And I have been arrested and interviewed under caution by the Major Crime and Homicide Command of the Metropolitan Police for a column in a national newspaper, words on a page. Sadiq Khan has a dedicated police hate unit policing speech online for the purposes of silencing dissent on Twitter. It cost him £1.7 million at a time when he says there's no money to put police on the streets. I was investigated by the West Midlands Police for daring to suggest that the majority of grooming gang members were Pakistani Muslim men. This was not looking good for me until statistically it was proven that the majority of grooming gang members are Pakistani Muslim men. You get the picture. And it's not that I mind the police intimidation, I really don't. The arrests or the attempts to kill me. I mind none of those things. In fact, the state, after the beheading attempt failed and the 2 jihadis were sent to prison, the British government commissioned a play. I should have brought the slide, actually, called The Assassination of Katie Hopkins. It was a play that went around the country. Actually, it was debuted in Wales. Welsh people. Because, you know, that seems to be how it is in our country. They will try and push you into silence. And I don't really mind the people that report me to social services as a bad mother either, in the hope that they'll take my children. I just wish they'd focus on the real problems that we have. Real police doing their job, tackling real crime, as opposed to people like me who speak out. And too often, of course, the police are part of the problem. So determined to follow the red narrative of diversity, of tolerance, and of acceptance. They refuse to hear when there's a problem with one powerful community who are beyond reproach. On the 16th of March in the UK this year, a young woman ran into the street, a main street, and she was on fire. She was a ball of fire. She was screaming, "Help me, help me." She was engulfed in flames. And in the street she was in, a garage owner heard her cries, saw this fireball, and ran out. And as she lay down on the grass, he managed to extinguish the flames. The ambulance were called and took her away. I still have the images of the grass, scorched black, where she fell. Police Scotland said there were no suspicious circumstances. No suspicious circumstances when a woman screams, "Help me," in the road in the middle of the day who has been set alight. And yet, concurrently, given the police had no comment, her local mosques issued a statement, which I have, reassuring the community this was not a crime of hate, the community has no reason to be alarmed, and good Muslims should not be gossiping about what might have happened to a sister. This is a family matter. It is almost like I am living in part of a parallel policing system, one where Christians or non-Muslims or people like myself are policed for our thoughts or our tweets or our copy in a newspaper, and yet one where honour killings are secreted away and filed under no suspicious circumstances. I wouldn't mind putting money that in the east of Oslo there will be no suspicious circumstances soon when other young girls are set alight for failing to marry the person they were supposed to marry. Or police turning a blind eye to what they don't want to see, such as the rape of 2,000 girls in Rotherham, just one city, there are many more, by majority Pakistani Muslim men. People get in touch with me, all the time because they can't speak out. And the same happened in Oulu in Finland, where mums and dads were scared because they knew what was going on, they could see what was going on, and no one would talk about it. The police were so fearful of being called racist or Islamophobic or of going against the tolerant narrative, they didn't want to do anything. So I went there, went to Oulu, which I know you can't tell Norwegians it's cold, but it's cold in Oulu, minus 30 degrees. There were cases there of young Finnish girls being sexually assaulted by migrant men, snared into their gangs by the hook and passed around by the coordinator. These are systematic, clever, coordinated gangs. And as I marched from City Hall to District Court to Parliament to the police station, more and more cases surfaced of a father originally turned away when he set up his own sting operation to catch the men who were raping his child. Of a 10-year-old girl repeatedly raped by 7 migrant men. A local mayor who I went to visit, still in denial, telling me he had no official communications on the matter, reminding me that local men were guilty of this crime too. How many times do we hear that? I asked him whether he felt a sense of duty to protect the daughters of Finland. He told me he had a greater sense of duty to the children of the world. I was savaged by the left-wing press, naturally. Wouldn't be the first time, would it now, Norway? But whilst I was there, the mainstream media broke their silence on the rape squads of Finland and Oulu. And in the parliamentary elections a few weeks later, the Finns party, who I spent time with, a strong national party campaigning to put Finnish people first and reduce immigration into their country, made huge gains. They nearly won, actually. It was a terrific day, and sent another strong warning to the EU. I know I can make a difference in this way by speaking out, and you guys really help with this. Everything you do with your platform, by attending, you amplify the voices of people like me, and for that there is no gratitude that I could pay you that properly pays you back for your investment in time and energy and your support. I feel like for those unable to speak out, because you have mortgages to pay, marriages to keep, jobs to hold on to, you do have an equally important role. informing those of us that can. I lost many of those things a long time ago, although I have managed to hold on to my husband, which my parents are very proud of me for. My first marriage lasted less than a year, so my father says I'm on something of a record. I figure my marriage anniversary my wedding anniversary should be the cumulative total over the total number of my marriages, but my father wasn't going for that. But you know, I am here to tell your truths because we are many. We are many. Not just here in this room, supporting each other, but across Western Europe too. The people that helped with that documentary, the Finns Party, the Swedish Democrats, the Alternative for Deutschland, Salvini's League, and Le Pen's resurgent national rally. And for the first time, young faces are on the scene with them. Thierry Badu, anyone seen him? Delightful. I thoroughly recommend to females in the room that you look him up. Le Pen's freshest face is the 23-year-old Jordan Bardella, son of a migrant, product of the Islamist suburbs, and now a strong voice for the national rally. And then the lovely Laura Huhtasaari. That was my Finnish for you, just as good as my Norwegian, thank you. She represents the Finns. She's a mother with 2 small children. She leaves them every week to be with her husband, not alone in a flat. Leaves them with her husband to go to the Finnish parliament because she is fighting to make Finland safe for her daughters. This is a new generation with authentic beliefs, reigniting this kind of belief in national pride. You know, we can make a difference. There is a feeling that change is afoot. 64 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. And I believe he will be back in 2020. And I will be there on the 23rd of June to wish him the very happiest of birthdays. There are 17.4 resilient Brits who will go out tomorrow in the European parliamentary elections, which no one normally gives a single stuff about. And we are going to go. I will be there at 10 o'clock before that place shuts, and we will vote for the Brexit Party because we will show that democracy will be respected and ordinary people will have their voices heard. Defiant. Thank you. Defiant Australians, did you see them? They put the Liberal National Coalition back in power, and the tears of the Labour Party, who were told they were going to win, are right here in this glass. I drink those Labour tears every day. South Africans preparing to make a final stand for their lands, saying they will die in their boots for the love of their lands, and Americans finally waking up to the threat that they face right now from within. You know, I always wanted to be a soldier, but it turns out I ended up in an army of great patriots just the same. And I know it's not too late for Norway. We still have time to protect this happy country from the threat that it faces. I believe we can do this. We tell our truths, we stand together, we get furious, and we fight back. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Would you like me to ask some questions? Yes. Well, not of myself. Ask you to ask some questions of me. And then someone will shout at me when I need to be quiet. Yeah. And would anybody like to ask anything? Yes. Oh, we've got brilliant. Super. Oh, yeah. If you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I'm wondering about this mainstream media. I sort of came into this from the way of Jordan Peterson and sort of made me aware of this narrative.
Yes.
And it seems like it's almost the same in every European country. So and I'm trying to figure out, there is obviously some of them of like almost like malicious intent, but it seems like most of them are more like like possessed. Like they're what Carl Jung said, people don't have ideas, ideas have people. Mm-hmm. And is there in any of these countries made any successful attempt at getting back, like snapping the media out of it? Is that possible? Like if we could like have just a few of our newspaper back.
Yes,
that would be nice. Like, has there been? Is there any techniques?
Yes, I know what you're saying. Thank you very much for your question. So I don't believe, certainly not in my experience, the mainstream media is malicious in its intent. Certainly not on our side. And you know, I was a national columnist for The Sun newspaper. It's a very working man's, white van man newspaper. If you're a builder, a brickie, a plasterer, you read The Sun. So I was their columnist for 2 years. And then I went on to be a columnist at Mail Online for 2 years and was at LBC Radio, a national commercial radio. So I say this because I'm an outsider, but I was part of it and it worked and they knew it. I don't believe it's malicious. It is purely a systematic and coordinated attempt to remove advertisers, and it works incredibly successfully. And in order to secure their financial and commercial future, they cannot afford to have risk. And someone like me is a massive risk because the advertisers are lobbied very successfully to have someone like me removed, for the same reason that Judge Janine just had to be exiled from Fox News to try and calm the storms, to try and retain the advertisers. And if all the advertisers say they're going to pull, that's the power they have, Judge Janine would be gone. So that's that, in the sense that I don't think that is particularly malicious. I think where the malicious sets in is with state broadcasters. So I would say absolutely the BBC, our state broadcaster, is a malicious endeavour, partly because I'm forced to fund it, and I noticed that in North Korea they get their propaganda for free. But even in terms of reporting straight facts, you know, I'm all about the emotion and the opinion, and it's my views, and if you don't like them, no problem. The BBC should be, surely, as your state broadcaster should, straight articulation of the precise facts. But if I look at their reporting on Israel-Palestinian conflict, it's always Palestinian dies after he attacked something you're not going to talk about. You know, the bias in our state broadcaster, I believe, is malicious. Is there a possibility of alternative platforms? Where the heck are they? People don't want to put finance often behind those sort of platforms, but I believe America will be the first place that we see a new Fox News. So there is one American news network, OANN. I could see there being, whatever the replacement is, whether it's OANN or another, there will be in America, because of Trump, a new right-wing news outlet that is allowing people to have opinions. Because if Fox goes as it's going, there's got to be a replacement for that. I certainly don't see an outlet like it in the UK just yet, which is why people like me end up going it alone, because it's the only way I don't get shouted at by an editor pretty much 24/7. So, going it alone and relying on the support of people, actually, I'm finding to be a joy. We were talking about this last night, and I was saying about how I feel that if you are on the side of good, then everything will be all right in the end. And that, you know, I'm all for planning and knowing what's going on and preparation and financial planning, but somehow I feel like this fight is much, you said it as well, is much more important than necessarily a salary or having super financial security. Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Would you like to ask one because you're holding the microphone, or? Yeah.
So first I want to make a comment about what you said, that media reports Palestinian dies after 3 points.
Yeah.
We have a joke in Israel that if September 11 would happen in Israel, it would be reported as 17 Saudi men die after a plane crashed into a building.
It's not funny, but it's true.
Yeah. So there's a famous saying in Arabic, after we finish with the Saturday people, we'll finish with the Sunday people. So I just want to ask you if you see this pattern, like I saw it as a child when the Oslo Accord was signed in Israel. Israel gave away Bethlehem, which was 85% Christian, and the Christians were begging for Israel to annex Bethlehem, and now it's 7% Christians because Yasser Arafat Muslim gangs came over and took it because it's a place with 1.5 million tourists a year. Second thing is what happened in the Middle East, that this week document had an article that it's officially genocide for Christians from 20% to 2%. But if you look before, in the 40s and 50s, they kicked out the Jews first. And now it's going up to Europe. First they kick out the Jews, then they're gonna kick out the Christians. So my question is, do you see this pattern? Number two is, what do you think the future of Europe? Because the way I see it, we are 20 years too late. So the options are either a civil war, either like what happened in, even the left admit, because they put borders in former Yugoslavia. So they admit that Christians and Muslims are like oil and water. It doesn't work. And yeah.
No,
so,
I think you're dead on the money. You know, speaking to my Israeli friends, they always sort of advise, or many people advise, that Jewish populations, families in Western Europe are sort of a symbol or a sign. If you watch what happens to the Jewish people, it will then happen to you. And certainly looking at Paris, you know, which is only, an hour for me to get to from my home, looking at the fact they're receiving letters saying, we know you're Jewish, get out or we'll kill you. That is the sign for us that they're coming for us next. And that doesn't feel too far away at all. So certainly I always think the Jewish population are a sign for us. I certainly think the Christian population already feel that we're under attack, or those with no religion. And I think what will happen, if I had a prediction based on my knowledge of South Africa and what's happening there in terms of a pullback to make a final retreat to an area that you can defend, some kind of new territory, I think that's what we will do as well. So I see Christians or those with no religion in the UK moving to Poland, to Hungary, to the countries that are defiantly Christian or of no religion. And our Jewish friends, and certainly my Jewish friends in London and elsewhere, are pulling to Israel. And that's why there's huge amounts of funds being put into the Aliyah Fund in Israel, because they plan for their population, as we saw, to explode over the next decade or two. And I think it's why it's one of the important things about Homelands. I will be doing a screening in London and a screening in Israel. So I feel like we're at least able to show that we hear this, we see it, we know it's happening, but certainly I think the move out is well underway. Another question, anybody? It can be on, I should also say, feel free to ask anything. Like, so you don't have to be polite, you don't have to be kind or agree, you can just completely go for it. I'm really hard to offend. And your hand went up, that's a bad sign. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Katie. My name is Victoria Stein, and I have a personal question. As I told you, I'm running for city council for the first time, and
I'm part of the cheerleading. Yes, good for you.
Thank you very much. And you're my role model. But just 2 weeks after I announced my candidacy, I was they threw alcohol at me in bars, and I've received death threats and threats of rape and everything, and people are going to kill my family. I was just wondering, do you have any advice or anything on how to
handle that stuff?
How to handle
yeah, of course. So congratulations for standing up to be counted. I think it's admirable, I think it's fantastic, and it is also brave. I apologize that you have received threats, rape threats. You've had stuff thrown at you. And this is where I don't mind for myself, but to the journalists who happily throw names around and call people things, call them names, call them fascists, make it okay to think that they're a target. It's not okay. It's not okay, especially when there's a mum who has kids. And my advice to you is to really stick your shoulders back and take it to them, because most of them are saying that stuff and would never come near you. Most of them, I meet them in the street and they go the other way. Fat people cross the road to avoid me, if I'm honest with you as well, but that's an entirely different thing. The people that have always said they're going to kill me, in truth, if they saw me in the street, they wouldn't come close to me. And so I take it to them. I don't have security. I've never had security, not in any of the places I've been apart from South Africa. I didn't have security in Mozambique. And I am very much of the attitude, go on then, try your best. Because I feel that when you go into the fight, you go all the way in. And if the best you're going to do is throw stuff at me, I've had liquid thrown at me before, and I understand when that, especially coming from the UK, when the liquid lands, people always say, oh, well, it was only milkshake, it was only wee. But actually, when that liquid lands in the UK, the first thought is acid. So it's not so much what the liquid is, what it represents. But I believe you'll be fine, and I think you just need to start working on your spider senses. So I always know who's behind me. If someone's too close to me, I'll stop until they've gone by. And I go about the world with a certain sense of, yeah, go on then. Because I really feel, I think maybe I'm invincible. Someone's going to have to prove me wrong pretty soon, aren't they? But I think it also comes a little bit from my surgery. So when I went for my surgery for my head, I had big brain operation. I don't have a skull. You can feel my brain actually later if you're really bored. I know like Norway can get really dull in the dark times of winter, so you could just play with my head. But that was, you know, there was a risk that you die, or there's a risk that you lose it was left leg, left hand, sight and speech, which my father said might be a blessing. But I think therefore I kind of made peace with all of that. And then because I came back more or less functioning, I feel like, right, that's it, I'm invincible. So yeah, I would definitely work on those skills to protect yourself. Always being aware of someone, always being aware of an ulterior motive, and always know where the door is, you know? And bring it. And if you get any trouble, call me, because I'll come.
Mr. Runar Todok, I thank you for a brilliant speech. I learned a lot. But since you encouraged some critical questions as well,
yes, of course.
I might try. I've kind of belonged to the left side in politics all my life. Still mean I belong there, although I've been working with foreign and security politics here in the Ministry of Defense for 15 years in the past. It's been a long journey to understand what's actually going on now inside our countries. I hesitated a lot to come here today, since I feel this, belonging to the left side in politics. But I'm glad I did. Two questions, though. Towards the end, you threw in some harsh criticism against the EU while, referring to the Brexit.
Yes.
Like you did. And I understood that you also support the re-election of Donald Trump in the US.
Yes.
And a lot of the crowd here applauded that. That kind of frustrates me, because in my view, that means that the kind of the old image of the right side, not in Norway, because in Norway the left side is against the EU, as opposed to most of Europe. But if you align those three things, criticism towards immigration, which I agree with you, with a criticism against the EU, perfectly knowing that the elitism and ignorance of these problems in the EU has been overseen for so long, and align that again with the support of the renomination of Donald Trump in the US, then I'm having a bit of trouble. Would you please explain?
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for a brilliant speech.
No, thank you. Thank you for asking. Genuinely, thank you for coming. I always think people that weren't sure about coming and didn't really think it was their thing, but came anyway, that's a joy to me. It's like people that tweet me and say, I really hated you. I think I still hate you, but I get this. And I kind of get that. Like, I feel like, you didn't come here because you signed up to agree. Not at all. You came because you would come and listen and give it a fair shot or whatever. And that to me is that is what we have to go back to as point number one. We have to go back to a time where we could sit in a room together even if we were crazy opposite ends of everything, and just say, we never said that we had to agree. We can completely disagree, and it's fine that we can talk, be in the same room, no problem at all. And what I've noticed in my short lifetime, I'm much younger than I look, is that that has completely gone. So even in London, you know, families, one side votes leave, one side votes remain. They don't have dinner together anymore because they can't even be in the same space. True in America too. So in a way, I'm kind of with you in that it's a joy to me that you blooming came. It's amazing that you know, we've had some things that we can agree on. There's some things further down here to do with EU, which I abhor the EU. I desperately want to leave. I'm a massive Brexiteer, and I understand Norway isn't really part of the EU, so maybe you're a bit biased by the fact you're not really in it. Don't know. And then Trump, yeah, we have to disagree there, because I love him, and he clearly needs to be my fourth husband. But he has better hair than me as well. But I think that's okay. I think you and I could like walk as far as the table hand in hand, and then we leave each other here. That's okay for me. And I really actually do believe Trump is, I appreciate that you aren't a big fan. I don't know of a better Democratic candidate to head with Donald. I don't see anyone beating him right now, which is bad news for you, I guess. But I think Donald, when I look at the fact that America has the highest rate of black employment in history, that it has the lowest unemployment rate in 65 years, that it has a booming economy, and that people are doing better. You know, those are the things that matter to me. So I can park some of the other stuff. But statistically, if I'm a black American, Donald Trump has done a whole bunch more for me than Obama ever did. And that seems to really matter to me. So I think that's okay. We can leave each other here. But I would like to end on that by just saying thank you for coming. Like, I completely love that you did that. And would I go to a massive lefty vegan event? Probably not. So that makes you a better person than me too, actually. Thank you very much indeed.